What's up, Javier Lobby? It's Javier Javier. Make sure you say it twice. I had a chance to talk to a very well-spoken guy. He runs the YouTube channel, for goodness sake. It's a small channel, but I think the guy is doing some pretty good work over there. So I decided to have a conversation with him. I was his first guest, and I think he did a pretty good job hosting the conversation. Now, we talked about politics, we talked about policies, and most importantly, we talked about the black community and the history of black people in America. For some reason, I keep getting drugged into this conversation, but I'm always willing to have it with people who are genuine, looking for honest answers, and want to have a decent conversation. So, this is what you will get in this conversation going forward. But I also implore you to go over and actually support his channel, hit the subscribe button, show him some love like you showed me love. I think you'll enjoy this conversation, and I look forward to reading your comments below and engaging with you about some of the subjects that we touched on. With that being said, let's get into the conversation.
1 in a million to one villain. Too hot to be in the kitchen, I'll end up melting the ceiling.
So we are live, man. Sorry, we're not live. We're just recording. Yeah, man. So I'm really happy to have you here. I really appreciate you taking time to be on my show. To give everybody a little background for my listeners, you're my first guest. So this is a little bit different for how we've done the show in the past. So why don't you just introduce yourself and we could just kind of take it from there. I can explain how I, kind of reached out to you and how that happened. So go on ahead.
All right. Sounds good. I am Javier Javier, the host and the creator of the Javier Javier show on YouTube. Make sure you say it twice.
Say it twice.
I talk all things, you know it.
Yeah.
I talk all things politics, religion, and culture. Those are my top three. So that's it covers a range of topics, basically about politics with, Trump, Biden, policies. I like to get into philosophy here and there, and I even do movie reviews and stuff like that. So that's basically what I've been into.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I got kind of tuned into you based on you were on Arian Foster's podcast. And what's funny is, so I saw you on Arian Foster's podcast, and I saw you guys went at it twice, and it was a lot of fun to watch. Because I think, so this is actually there's two main reasons, actually. I'll say there's two main reasons why I reached out to you. The first thing is, so, everybody will see when they click on this, we'll have to have the clickbaity headlines of like conservative, progressive, conservative, liberal, we have to, that's just how you do it, So they'll see that you are, for people that know me on my show, they'll know that I'm progressive, or just know me in my life. They'll know that I'm progressive, so they'll assume that you are the conservative. I'm sure people watching your show know that about you as well. So one, you're conservative. That's like number one reason why I reached out to you. But not only are you conservative, you're conservative of like our generation. Let me say, how old are you?
28.
28. So you're kind of exactly. So I'm gonna be 22 in about a week. So we're on this like new kind of era of conservatism, progressivism, and that's one thing I noticed when you were talking with Arian Foster. He was wondering like, how are you a conservative, man? Like, he didn't understand because it's different now, right? Like conservative is different for us,
Definitely. It is something that he had a hard time wrapping his mind around, and it was funny that he didn't really see how I was conservative, but we disagreed on like almost every single thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, like you're a decent person, and I feel like we conservatives get a bad rap sometimes for good reason. I'll put for good reasons. I have friends and family members and all this that are conservative or Republicans in the more traditional sense. So I love them. We have a great relationship. I can talk with them about stuff. But I can be honest, there are some good reasons why they get a bad rap, so.
I think the biggest difference between me and like, your mainstream conservative you might see on like the news and what they show in the conservative is because I'm an atheist. I'm not actually religious, So I tend to see things from a different perspective, I guess.
Yeah. That's super interesting to me too. And it actually like it's funny because you still have some of those like the values about like the family structure that you brought up, which one of cards on the table before we get into everything, like one of the things that I have a problem with, our generation of conservatism is kind of monopolizing certain values, like that's something that you brought up, but that's something I'll take an issue with in a bit once we get out to the intro and stuff. But needless to say, like the family structure is kind of like thought of as the more traditional conservative thing, and it has its roots in very conservative policy and whatnot. So
I wouldn't say it's necessarily conservative. I would say that it's a value that I think many people hold, and conservatives just put more of an emphasis on conserving that value.
Yeah, I like that. We're gonna get into that because that's one of my my big things. I feel like it's unfair to you actually, because I got to listen to you in 2 full videos where you're talking just straight politics with somebody. As much as I love politics and I talk about politics all the time, pretty much. My videos aren't necessarily just political, and even if you checked out any of my videos, none of them are just like me going straight through talking about my positions on X, Y, Z. So I feel like you're at a little bit of a disadvantage, where I'm just kind of.
It's fun, man. I enjoy it.
See, that I sense that about you. The second reason why I reached out to you, because I sense that you were a good-hearted person who wanted to talk about things that they care about and defend their beliefs, but isn't necessarily rooted in their beliefs, like you'll never change them, or that you just have to force your beliefs on somebody else's throat. You're like, I want to just debate for the betterment of everybody, right? That's what I sense from you.
Of course.
Yeah, so that's I actually, to give everybody a little bit of background info, I saw I saw these videos about you, and then I just was like, honestly, I got to talk to that guy. And I had just expected, being that you were on Aaron Foster's podcast, famous dude, which is funny that you didn't even know that this dude was famous, an NFL player, like a former NFL player. That's hilarious to me. And then I'm expecting about you, I'm just like, oh, well, he's on Aaron Foster's podcast, so he's going to be this, hundreds of thousands of followers and subscribers, and, all these comments that, you're going to like not even be able to see mine. And it turns out you're a little bit more of a low-key dude as well, which I think is very respectable for a Black conservative, really, because it's very profitable. It's kind of something you mentioned with Aaron Foster. Yeah. It's very profitable to be a Black conservative, and you're not going that route. So it really is a sign to me that you're not just a shill, that you care about things, and that, maybe you have unorthodox opinions currently, but it's not that they're bad or you're bad.
Yeah. I see it this way. It doesn't matter how high in the tower you get. Eventually the fire will reach you. So you could be Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. If the country's people are not allowed to prosper and grow and learn and to, live in a world they want to live in, eventually it's going to show up at your front doorstep. And I don't want to be one of those people that just do it for the profit. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, I love that, man. I'm so glad. So I actually do this thing. It's a quote of the day. Every episode has a quote that I find relevant to what I'm talking about, that I find interesting, that I feel important is to share with people. And I think that is the perfect quote of the day. And hopefully, as we keep talking, we'll find more, because you seem like a guy with a lot of insight. But that's a great quote of the day. So give it to me one more time. No matter how high up you get, the fire will still reach you.
Yeah, definitely. The fire will reach you.
I love that. Matter.
Because you know how fire rises. It's going to burn everything below you. Eventually it's coming up. I just came up with that.
Yeah, that's great, man. Come on. Like, you're freestyling, you're coming up with gems on the spot. I love it. So again, one more thing before we get into just kind of jiving about politics and everything, and I kind of start attacking you with all of my pent up, notes about, your beliefs. Where is the name Javier Javier? Where does that come from? The say it twice. I loved it. I loved that it was like, it makes you say it twice every time. I love the attitude. Where did that come from?
I'm originally a music artist. I've done hip hop for most of my
Right.
life, and I never did it to try to be famous. I always did it
Right.
as a hobby or something that I
Right.
enjoy to do.
Art. Yeah.
And
Release.
yeah, and one of the ad libs, because I was going by Javier, but in my music I would say Javier Javier based on like
Yeah.
music, and it just grew on me. So I just started, I adopted it twice,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
know, I figured if anything is good enough, it's good enough to do twice.
Yes, man, I like that. I like that a lot, man. That's great. Another gem right there. You know, it's like if anything's good enough, is it good enough to do twice? There you go.
Yeah,
All
definitely.
right, man. I'm excited. I think that I had, like I said, I think I put you at a disadvantage. So I'm glad that you came with a spirit of playfulness and openness, because that's kind of how I'm at it. Like, I am passionate about what I believe, and I can tell that you are too. And I will fully confront certain things, but it really is out of love. And like you said, it's like, we're trying to put out the fires. We're not trying to make more fires, So
Of course, yeah.
yeah. So with that said,
So let's do it.
yeah, man. So let's say there was just a big election. What do you feel about that? So Joe Biden was elected. One, can I be rude and ask you who you voted for? And two, why you voted for them, or if you did not vote at all. I actually saw a tweet that you posted that you did vote at some level. So I know you voted at least. So if you want to share what you think about voting, maybe, or I'll just open that up in that way of like, who you voted for, what your thoughts on voting is, and what do you think about Trump being gone and we have Biden?
I didn't vote for Joe Biden and I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I actually, yeah, I voted third party. And honestly, the way I see voting really is, I think most progressives, and I think even conservatives, would want more and more people to vote. And I originally supported Donald Trump in 2016 because I thought that Donald Trump would ignite a reawakening of the human spirit when it comes to politics. More and more people would get involved and start asking the questions and figuring these things out, which I think has been accomplished. I mean, more people have gotten involved with politics than ever before, you know, and it comes with its pros and cons.
Right. And whether we did it because of his great leadership, or because of the opposite of that, that's both have happened.
And I believe at the end of the day, I think everything has to be strategic. I'm not really invested in how people feel about a particular politician. I don't care how he makes you feel or she makes you feel. I care about how do we be most effective, not just in the next 4 years, but 20 years from now. Right. And I saw Donald Trump as something that would ignite a spirit in Americans that would push politics such to the forefront that we have to take these situations seriously. And for that, I thank him. Now, as far as you asked me about voting. I really do feel like the only people who should vote are people who are informed. People who go out and vote because, people who go out and vote just because their mother told them to go vote, or, just because they picking a side because they have to. I don't think those people should vote. I think people should really take the time to understand politics and understand the implications before they go out and cast a ballot.
Yeah. So there's a lot in there already. I'm so happy. Because sometimes it's like, oh man, are we gonna have enough to talk about? First sentence in, I know that's not gonna be an issue. So let me start with what you said about voting based off how somebody makes you feel. Because this is something that I have, and about it's connected to the strategic, thing that you said about being strategic, and being strategic about making the best things come forward. Because I kind of I just differ from that, right? And I don't differ because I think that, like, how somebody makes you feel is more important than their policies or something. But I feel like there is like a balancing act that they both are involved, right? Like, so for example, you know, let's just say that, you know, there's a politician who makes you feel meh. Like they don't make you feel good, they don't make you feel bad. They're just kind of like a 50 on a scale of 1 to 100, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's their policy platform, which is like spot on, you know? I don't think we should vote based on how we feel. And, you know, the opposite of the other candidate, their policy platform is horrible, but they made you feel great. I don't think we should vote based on how we feel in that situation of like, we should look at what their platform is and like, we should be listening to that. But don't you think, like, because we brought it up in reference to Trump, right? Don't we think that like, if we just matched up policy platform and policy platform for Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and we matched up like how bad Trump makes people feel versus how like bleh, old white dude, you know, been around forever, questioning his motives. Like, don't you think like that's like, despite, I wouldn't say that like all of Donald Trump's policy platform is horrible across the board in every single way. I understand there are some things that like I could agree with, but don't you think that as bad as like he makes people feel, that should be given some type of weight?
Of course, I think that unfortunately, people feelings matter.
I'm glad you're not Ben Shapiro, you know, with the, you know, facts don't care about your
care about your feelings.
Right, feelings, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a lesson I had to learn the hard way.
Right.
But feelings do matter. Human beings have feelings, and it motivates people to do one thing versus the other. So, yeah, how you feel matters, but I have to throw in a but here. I have to point out that I don't necessarily think Donald Trump makes people feel as bad as you claim, because 78 million people
74. Everybody goes 75. We're rounding down, all right? He was like 74.1. Right. We're rounding down.
Okay. That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people.
And Biden got more people. I'm just saying that's a lot of people.
Yeah. But so can I rebuttal that with like, do you think all those people were like felt good about Trump or even voting for Trump? Like, do you think they all cast their ballot like like, oh, I'm so excited, like, you know what I mean?
No,
like,
I don't think so, and I don't think they did so for Biden either. I mean,
exactly, no, for sure. But I do think there's like a level. Like, I feel like you know, we're living in a polarized time. Like, I remember I had a conservative who I was really close with. They're pretty much my family. They're not exactly my family or a parent of my friend, my best friends, but pretty much my family, man. Like, just love them to death. And I remember the mother, she came to me and she told me, she was like, Mesfin, what am I supposed to do? All right, I'm a conservative. This is her label, right? She said, I want abortion to be legal for women that need it. You know, not personally, you know, that's not how I, you know, would want to do it, but I want abortion to be legal for women who need it. But I want lower taxes. So where's the party for me? Yeah, man, that's what she said. Where's the party for me? So she votes Republican, and you know, because that's what she thinks is in her best interest. But when I've talked to her about Trump, she's like, dude's a pig. You know, we've seen the rape allegations and the cases that have been raised against him, and you know, we've heard what he said about women, and you know, sexually assaulting them openly and being okay with it. Dude is a pig. Dude's gross. Dude's vile. So she's like voting for him, just thinking like, nobody else is better. Like, it's not because like, you know, he doesn't make her feel bad.
Yeah, I get you. There's a lot in there.
Yeah. Sorry, I feel like that's going to be the train of this conversation. It's just going to continue. Like, you know, we're going to have to try and be specific. I'm going to do my best, but I struggle.
It's cool. I would say that you listed off a few of her concerns, like he was a pig and he had the rape allegations and these things. I would make the argument that why does any of that matters when it comes to a person's policies and what they will accomplish. Now, let me just point out this caveat real quick. A lot of world leaders throughout history have been horrible people.
Yeah.
and have still accomplished great things. So it doesn't necessarily disqualify somebody from being an option. We could agree on that. I mean,
We can
at
agree
least.
on that you can do good things and be a horrible person. Correct. And in fact, you could
Yes.
do a lot of good things even, right?
And you could do a lot of horrible things. I mean, you could do a lot of good things and be a horrible leader.
That's true. This is true. So I think that this actually gets to another fundamental kind of like issue that I get at, so you had mentioned, it sounds like it's going to go left field, but I promise I'll bring it back in. So you had mentioned to Arian Foster, you had mentioned him like, what do you think about the fact that capitalism has, raised the most people out of poverty in history? And, I know that to be true. Like I know that there is like empirical evidence, right? I know that there's also like empirical evidence of like if we change the number of what we call poverty from like $1 a day to $2 a day or like to $5 a day, the numbers are a lot fishier. But just granting that, right? That's a big issue, right? Where what you're giving me is like a utilitarian argument, right? Like if somebody does good in this area, despite them being a morally bad person, if everybody could even agree on what's morally bad, if we call them morally bad, but they do good in this area, shouldn't that be acceptable? Shouldn't we just allow them to lead and, ignore the fact that they're a morally bad person? I think that we should reject that idea. I don't think that we should, you're into a little bit of political philosophy, so I think that you'd appreciate this. Like, I'm reading about John Rawls right now. So John Rawls had a theory of justice that was like, basically, if you didn't have any idea about whether you were black or white, male or female, gay, straight, trans, whatever it is, poor or rich, how would you decide society should be? And if you could talk to everybody else under the same conditions, veil of ignorance, my man, that's what I'm talking about. So veil of ignorance has been used to justify utilitarianism, but he uses it to justify a theory of fairness, which I subscribe to heavily. And that's why I think that that's a big difference between where we're thinking. And that might just be something where I can't convince you this or you can't convince me that. We might just never agree. But I really do think that there's an important way of thinking. That's like something that we should think about. Like, is it just okay just because there's like a utilitarian increase? Let me
ask you this. Let me ask you this. What is politics except utilitarianism? What purpose does politics serve if it does not increase certain outcomes?
No, you're right. Like it is the idea is to increase certain outcomes, but there is a different, it doesn't have to be based on utility. Although our society with the people who our founding people, chose to listen to, they did go for utilitarian outcomes. You're right. Like that is just how our society was shaped. But, John Rawls coming in like the 90s or 70s, coming up in the 1970s, like decided, hey, maybe we could like be different. Maybe we could organize the good that we give to people around different principles. And that principle, one of which could be like, everybody has these equal opportunities and, equal liberties. But then also like, even if you're the worst off amongst us, even if you're like the most like you can't go to work, you just choose to ignore school, like all these, like you just like have no, you're like the worst. Yeah, exactly. No aspirations, worst lot in life. We still, as a society, should provide you with like a floor of where you can go, of how low you can go in terms of like desperation and, like economic status and like medical care and all this stuff. Like he's like, we should provide a floor and you should still be an educated member of like the political system as much as possible, or at least like your voice should be heard or represented. So it's got all these like complex situations or whatever, but that's really more along where I'm like compelled by, like, is like, there is something, even if we can't word it exactly, there is something called morally right and morally wrong. And like people who are morally wrong shouldn't be allowed to lead us, even if they like do good things. Like being a good person matters.
You can't be a leader amongst men and women. without being a bad person to a certain degree.
I completely disagree.
All right. So
Don't you
what
think you're a
you
leader to all your followers?
I believe so, but I'm not. When it comes to decision making for other people's lives, I think there are going to be times where you have to be the bad guy or the bad woman.
Okay.
And for example, Obama made people feel good, but at the same time, Obama was bombing a lot of places with airstrikes, and kids died.
Okay. Can I have a rebuttal?
I'm not focused. All right, before you rebuttal, I'm gonna say this. I'm not focusing on the fact that Obama was doing what he was doing. What I'm saying is sometimes leadership causes you to do horrific things.
You do good and bad, right?
Yeah.
And I totally agree. But I think that there's there's a couple of things where it's like, one, he didn't bomb those people because he's a good or because he's a bad person, right? Like some of the bad things that Trump did were because he's a bad person, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like seriously, like when, yesterday was like what? Biden's like second full day in office, right? And like he immediately comes out and he's like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're going to just like give people more food. Like there's people that are starving out of work, we're just going to give people more food. So Trump didn't give people more food, even though that would just be a good thing to do right now. It's not like, oh, like you're a Republican, so you wouldn't do this, or you're a Democrat, so you wouldn't. I think George Bush, I don't even think highly of him in any way. I think George Bush would have given people more SNAP and EBT assistance during this situation. I really do. I really think that George Bush would have done that because I don't think he's a horrible human being. And I do genuinely believe Trump is a horrible human being. I do believe he's done some policies, like he's signed some policies into action that like would benefit things that I am happy about, so I'm not saying that he's never done anything that I think is good, but it's not because he's a good person that he did those good things. Just like it's not because Obama's a bad person that he did that bad thing. Like you said, there's moral dilemmas, and like we end up on the right side and the wrong side.
But the problem that with that argument is, for one, I don't accept that a guy could bomb and kill kids and walk off on stage and smile in front of millions of people and be a good guy. I don't think it's possible, but I could be wrong.
Let me give you an argument there for that, because I think that it's important to know that he decreased kids dying by bombing with those drones rather than having what we were doing. Okay, that's one thing.
Okay, that's a utilitarian argument. But
that is a utilitarian argument. You're right. But I'm not saying that we can never use utilitarian arguments. I just think like the foundations of our society should not be utilitarian. Like when it comes to certain things where we have no other way to decide, which you could argue to me that like the decision he should have made is like just completely reject any type of foreign military intervention at all. And that would be like the more argument that I'm talking about of like the Rawlsian view of like, making sure even if you're a Syrian child or, if you're in Iraq, like you're not going to get bombed just because you fall on this side of the world. You're very much right. That is a utilitarian argument. And, I think that there is room for it in some places, but Obama himself was not going to end, the military industrial complex. Like he wasn't, like he couldn't, you know what I mean? Like, don't you think like there's no way that he was going to do that? Like he was talking about things and he tried to get awareness, but he had no power to do that,
Well, I mean, he took the job. I mean, at some point, why are you taking a job that you don't feel like you're equipped to do the right thing under pressure or even against all odds? I mean, I would argue that I don't want to stray too far off from the conversation.
Yeah, but I hear you. We'll get back.
Yeah, but it's something about if you took that argument you made for Obama and say he's not a bad guy, even though he did some bad things. Okay. Even serial killers woke up and cooked their daughter's breakfast and went to church.
Did they though? Did they?
Yes. There are serial killers nobody ever suspected because they were such outstanding citizens in society.
For sure.
Would you make the argument like, hey, he was still a good guy? Maybe he chopped up a few folk.
Okay. I think that's a fair argument. It's almost like, what I try to think of is like when women talk about sexual predators or just men who have raped them, and maybe they're not a serial predator, but like they just got them, they were just super drunk and they just raped them when they were super drunk or something like that, like things like that. I think of that as like most of those guys outside of that situation are, you know, you see them and you think, oh, you're a good dude, like you're going to school or you're going to work every day or you're going, you know, you're doing your thing, no problems. But if you ask that woman, she's not going to tell you he's a good guy. So I think of that situation, I think that that's like a good comparable situation to what you're talking about as well. And it proves why the whole idea of utility is wrong. But I do think that there are things that, like, I hear your argument, and I actually echo it about him just not doing everything he could against all odds. I hear you. I think that, like, I personally would have loved if he would have gotten on stage and been like, do y'all understand this dude, Mitch McConnell, is a you-know-what? You know, like, he is stopping everything. He hates you. Like, he hates me. You know, like, you know, I wish he would have been more like that. But, you know, I've listened to a lot of what he said, and I've been one of the most critical people about him. Honestly, it doesn't seem like it now, but you have to take my word for it. I think that he believed that he was elected because he wasn't like that, and he was the type of person to fight to try and come to some common ground and give up some of his own personal interests and kind of compromise a little bit to try and get some common ground, despite the fact that nobody else wants to compromise and common ground type thing. So he believes that, he was elected because he was the type of person to try and bring people together rather than being that bully pulpit kind of like, get the F out of Iraq. We don't need to be there. Like, you know, but so I hear your argument there. It's important, but I think that specifically Obama, I mean, come on, man, look at literally, can I ask you something? Do you think, because this is what I think it's pretty clear to me, and this might just be my own arrogance, but I think it's pretty clear that Obama being elected Donald Trump because he was black. Like, regardless of what his policies would have been, it was because he was black. No, I mean, you got to tell me if you think I'm wrong.
You have to ask the question. I think when Obama was running for office, did he not run against another white guy?
Yeah, 100%.
So they had a choice to choose the white guy instead of the black guy.
Yeah, no. I don't think that people who were voting in 2008 or 2012 hated Obama, you know, or like, no, I wouldn't say that. Like, I don't think that people who were voting in 2008 or 2012 were like, oh, I need to vote against him because he's black. I'm saying that, like, the fact that he was president for so long and the cultural changes around the country, kind of like, he epitomized them, you know, like seeing him in president in the office for so long, mobilized for a dude who would say racist things and just be openly sexist and just spew things.
I think Obama set the conditions. I think.
Wow.
And
set the conditions in 8 years, though.
A lot of people like to ignore the fact that Black Lives Matter started under Obama.
No, that's true.
Martin started under. A lot of these things were happening when Obama was in office.
I mean, like, Obama didn't kill George Zimmerman, or didn't kill Trayvon Martin. George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin, so that's its own thing.
Yeah, but you're right. A lot of the tensions were rising as Obama was in office, and I don't think Obama appropriately reacted to those things in a way that would have been most ideal for the country.
I think that the things that he did that were good in those situations, he didn't broadcast them because of his own demeanor, because he chooses to be kind of more the modest, trying to call people down rather than like flaunt what he's done well. But like one thing that he did after what was the Baltimore shooting?
You're talking about
Michael Brown, maybe?
I think it's Michael Brown.
I mean, dang, like isn't it sad how they all just run together? It's like, you don't know, Ferguson, Michael Brown, you know, whatever. So anyways, there was either the Ferguson shooting or the Michael Brown shooting that led to a huge uprising of, like you mentioned, the Black Lives Matter. And what Obama did was like have his black attorney general as well. That was under a black attorney general that the Black Lives Matter came around. What he did was have Eric Holder, his black attorney general, launch a nationwide investigation into police departments and see their taxes. And that's how we find out how bad the Baltimore police, how corrupt they were, Chicago Police Department, how the mayor had,
But it wasn't about what Obama did. It was about how he made people feel, like you said earlier.
But isn't that?
Go ahead.
No, please. I'm dominating the conversation, and I feel bad. I need to let you at least have your saying too.
No, it's cool.
You're a gentleman.
I think Obama made people realize that just because he's black doesn't mean he can fix these problems.
That's true.
This goes deep into the psychology of black people in America. Black people have this idea that if we just have more black people in power and more black people in certain positions, that somehow is going to fix all of our problems. And when these black people get in power and the problems don't get fixed, we somehow think that it's due to the failure of that person. It's not. What really matters is how we change it, because the president doesn't have the power to really change the things that really matter for us to get to where we need to be. And I think that was a backlash against Obama, because there are a lot of black people who were upset that Obama didn't do more for them, which he was in a tough
But it's not black people who elected Trump though. So like you're right, and maybe black people voted for Hillary Clinton even by at margins of 9-1, 8.5-1. So that's what, you're right about that. That was an issue, and that's probably an issue we still kind of are sifting through, with that's probably why in Georgia, you're in Georgia, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you guys came through. I know you probably weren't too happy, but actually I don't really know what your opinion is. But my boy Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, John Ossoff is it's cool, but Raphael Warnock is a legit MLK Democrat. You know what I mean? That's kind of some good stuff.
Yeah, I was definitely not looking forward to him getting it. I really didn't want any of them to get it. I wanted to start over.
What's your deal with Raphael Warnock, man? That guy is legit continuing the legacy of MLK. You know what I mean? All his positions, anti-imperialism,
Well, for one, he's a preacher. I'm an atheist. I don't get too high off my horse off of preachers. But that's nitpicking. I'm just saying
that's a little nitpicky. I'm glad you can acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But that's fair. I get you. There's a bad history with Christianity and controlling our government. I can kind of understand that.
To me, it came down personally to black people. As somebody who is an atheist, somebody who speaks out against religion and these preconceived notions on what black people are supposed to be like. Whenever I see somebody pulling those strings to get votes and to pulling on that, black people's identity based on the history of this country, it bothers me because I really couldn't tell you mostly any of this guy's policies. Even when I watched his commercials, I really didn't see much of policies there. I saw more of, pandering to a certain image of I am the black preacher who, taught in MLK's. And to me, it's just, it doesn't, I don't like that.
Yeah. And that, what, honestly, that's somewhere that I feel like I can agree with you on. I didn't feel that with Raphael, and that might have been my own biases or whatever. I think that he's a genuine person for different reasons, but to put him aside, that's somewhere I can resonate with you with, that I feel like it would be hard for, I'm not the type of person that's black people have some superior knowledge. We're the chosen people from Israel, we know more than white people. I'm not that type of person. There are certain experiences that if you have that experience, it gives you knowledge, and you have to learn from stuff. I don't have the knowledge of being a woman or something. So there are some things that I've had to learn from women, to try and remind me of. And then it's oh, you've taught me, I can learn now. You don't always just have some esoteric knowledge, But I will say that this is one of those things where I don't think that white people probably have a good understanding of what it feels like to, experience, where I kind of always trained to see people as pandering or as manipulative. Exactly.
Strings.
Yeah. I think that that's a responsibility. I feel like it's unfortunate, but I feel like that's as a result of that. One, my family, my girlfriend, everybody in my life, like, you know, they know that I'm kind of like paranoid for that. Like when I'm seeing commercials or I'm seeing like actors or musicians, like I'm always like, oh, they're like, you know, they're so fake or they're pandering. Cause it's like, we're trained for it. We're trained to, see that.
And I could be wrong. I mean, I could.
Exactly.
Warnock could just be who he is, and it's
Right.
that's the real him. I'm not saying it's not.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing about the left and progressives, liberals, and this is where my conservatism really kicks in, is I hate identity politics with a passion. And in my introduction, when I told people who I was, I didn't talk about how I grew up in the projects and I spent 5 years locked up, and, I was dirt poverty poor, and, gang lifestyle, the whole 9 yards. And one thing that I am so happy of is that I never allowed people around me to define me based on a certain characteristic that I couldn't change. And this idea that the Black community or the LGBT community or the white community all think a certain way or have certain experiences, and it doesn't necessarily translate into the real world. And
right.
I hate identity politics.
Mm-hmm.
I hate when people put me in a bucket or in a basket of victimhood or whatever because of my skin color.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been a victim, no matter when I was serving time, no matter even in poverty. I never took on that mentality of I'm a victim. And I think it has excelled me. Then if I had taken on that identity, I think it would have held me back, because I see it every day in my brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll tell you what, like, I heard you say that a little bit, like you just barely mentioned that. I'm glad, appreciate you leveling with me like that. Because I can hear your passion. I can feel, your a little bit of your story, just a little bit of your story, in that when you're explaining who you are, not through the lens of just a race or just a gender or just a whatever else, I see how, it conveys a little bit of who you are. And, so I was always lucky. My mom is like the super mom, like she was constantly telling us how much we were loved, how much I was loved, how much, I could do whatever I wanted to do. Like there are no limits. And she was constantly pushing me, we have this thing where it's like, if the goal that I'm striving for, the bar is set here and I get here, guess what? It's time to go here. And then, so yeah. That's just how I was raised, and I think that that's, like you mentioned, like being able to be an individual is like honestly, personally, what I think is like, it's the blessing of life, like you get to experience who you are and you get to like show the world who you are, and you get to be unique and you get to just like be yourself. Right. So that's like seriously
and
a great.
I do understand the argument that white people started identity politics. I'm not living under any illusion that white people didn't start it, but I was always taught 2 wrongs don't make a right.
True that. Quote of the day again.
And I refuse to let somebody else's actions define my actions and how I see the world and how I behave. And I think that's the era that the left is taking, because they started it, that we somehow have to retaliate with the same mentality to even things out. I think it's a mistake.
Yeah. So I have like kind of like back and forth beliefs about this, because like part of me, thinks about the fact that, they started it in, not that we have to like equalize, not that we have to like do it the same just to make it even, but that like at some level there has to be a way to respond, like to make things better. And like, I don't think that when people are like, there needs to be justice, right? That's what I think about. Like there is still injustice in today,
you can't fix it. You can't. Now, when I say you can't fix it, I'm not saying that you can't fix certain problems that we're having now. But I think
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. Right. Well, go ahead.
I know. I feel where you're going to. Like you can't make right what happened in the past, and I see what you're saying with that. I think that there are things that are remnants of the injustice of the past that are therefore injustices today. And there are things we can do to respond to that. do we need to call those things, I do, I'm going to take a stance. Yeah, I do think that like, okay, so if we look at like the urban communities in America, right? Urban being code for Black dominated, inner city, you know what I mean? Like, if we look at those communities and we look at the fact that, historically they were intentionally designed to be unprosperous and, segregated and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now there is still a lack of funding into those communities as a result of that racist policy. These racist outcomes still occur today, right? Could we agree on that? I know.
To a certain extent, I can agree with you.
Right.
Yeah, but
like there was
it sounds like learned helplessness. It sounds like,
oh man, like
that's the argument though. The argument is because of all of these things that has happened has led us in this place, and the only way to rectify them is by the people who benefited from it to rectify it.
No, I don't think. I feel like I lived in a suburb in Minnesota, right? Like I didn't live in. My mom, a white woman, grew up in the inner city of North Minneapolis. Like it wasn't as dangerous and bad. Now it's kind of deteriorated over the years, lack of funding and stuff. But regardless, like it was still like the hood, like she legit, I shouldn't even put quotation marks. She legit grew up in what we call the hood. That's why I put in quotation marks. I did not grow up in that. I did not grow up in, poverty. Like it wasn't always like, great, perfect situations all the time, but we always had a place to live and food food in our stomachs, et cetera, et cetera. So, and the other thing, like I went to a good school, like it was a public school that was like, quality education and like great teachers, like very educated, caring, a lot of time, activities, a lot of funding for activities. Like, I mean, like we had a good school. So that's like what I'm trying to get at. If I go to North Minneapolis, my mom's school that she went to, actually, the high school that she went to was like this close to being shut down. I think it was shut down for a period, but they got this dude who's now in the NFL. Like he was just like a really good basketball and football player. And he just like brought fans to the school. So like people had enough money when he would have games, like they had enough money through pretty much him, like being a great athlete to keep their school open. So that's a digression. I'm sorry. My point is that like, I'm not going to get as good of an education if I go to that school. Like, right. Like we could agree, right? Like, it's just like,
let me point something out though.
Okay.
Growing up, I didn't go to bad schools. I mean, it was probably bad compared to a lot of other schools, but we had books, we had teachers, and maybe not the best teachers or whatever, but it was enough. And I can tell you at firsthand experience. Now, my experience doesn't translate over to all Black people in all areas of the country. I would never make the claim that what I went through is universal to all Black people in different areas. But the amount of my peers, including myself, who had access to all of this information, we didn't care.
Yeah.
We didn't seek out books. We wasn't in the library trying to find the information and knowledge. There was a mentality in my community. Nobody cared about school. Nobody wanted to learn. I didn't go to college to become as intelligent as I am now. I did go to school and get a business degree, but I didn't study philosophy or politics in college. I learned myself. It's a mentality. And I think that it's an escape or a cop-out to blame everything on the lack of education or schools, especially living in a day and age where we have access. I know poor people with iPhones that have better phones than me.
That's true. And there's a reason for that. That's because, iPhones have gotten cheaper and cheaper over the past 30 years, and houses and daycare and education has gotten more expensive over that year. Healthcare has gotten more expensive over that same period. Those are reasons, but I hear you, and you're right about this. Like, I am not going to make the claim that if we just have better schools, or if we just have let's just keep it with schools. Like, if we just have better schools, then everybody would just be good. I won't make that claim at all. I'm not making that claim. But I will say you're right that it doesn't make all the difference every single person. Like,
And I'm all for making schools better.
and I'm all for it. And
Yeah.
I'm all for,
What I
improving.
but what I don't get, and I'm gonna let you talk.
Yeah, please.
What I don't get for the life of me is why the left doesn't spend just as much energy and time that they do talking about white oppression and schools being poor. Why they don't put that much attention and time in changing the mentality of Black people in these situations? Why they don't shine a spotlight on the Black culture and the negativity within it? I'm not saying all Black culture is negative, but the parts that are negative, why don't the left spend just as much time talking about those things, which are crucial?
Right. So I feel like that's a loaded question, because this first thing we have to divide who on the left are we talking about? Because I feel like a lot of times what we do, and this is guilty of people on the left as well, we take like politicians and like the average American, whatever that means, like the working class American, and then like the college going Americans, and we say they're all the same thing. We say they're all the right, they're all the left. I just did that backwards, but that's all right.
One in a million to one villain. Too hot to be in the kitchen, out in the melting the ceiling.